There are two types of people who feel permanently outside the crowd, who observe more than they participate, who understand others at a level most people never reach. From the outside, they look almost identical, but inside, they are running completely different operating systems. One of them feels deeply and is sometimes overwhelmed by it. The other feels deeply and has learned to use it. One stays outside the crowd because belonging was never the point. The other stays outside because it gives them a better view. We're talking about the Otrovert and the dark empath. And the difference between them might be the most important psychological distinction you encountered this year. The term dark empath entered psychology relatively recently, and when researchers first described it, many people felt uncomfortable. Because it describes someone who scores high on empathy and high on the dark triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. In plain language, someone who can feel what you feel and use that knowledge strategically. A 2021 study by Nadja Haim and Alexander Sumich found that dark empaths were rated as more dangerous than people who score high on the dark triad alone. Not because they feel nothing, but because they feel enough to know exactly where to press. The dark empath is charming, perceptive, often magnetic. They read rooms effortlessly. They know what you need to hear. They are rarely the loudest person in the room, but they are almost always the most aware of what's happening in it. Sound familiar? It should, because on the surface, several of those qualities describe the Otrovert too. And that is exactly why this distinction matters. Both the Otrovert and the dark empath exist at the edge of the social world. Both observe more than most. Both carry a depth of perception that most people around them simply don't have. Both have often been called intense, too much, or hard to read. But here is where the path splits. The Otrovert's depth is directional. It moves toward understanding, toward seeing clearly, sitting with complexity, finding meaning. The observation is not a tool. It is simply how they experience the world. The dark empath's depth is also real, but it is instrumental. The perception is in service of something. Influence, advantage, control, not always conscious, not always intentional, but present. The Otrovert watches people because the world is genuinely fascinating to them. The dark empath watches people because people are useful. There's a second difference that goes even deeper. The Otrovert is uncomfortable being the cause of someone else's pain. Not performatively, not because of social rules, but because they genuinely feel the weight of it. The dark empath can feel that weight and choose to continue anyway, or feel a version of it, processed at a distance, contained, managed. That gap between feeling and choosing is everything. Here's the question most people are actually asking when they find this topic. Am I one of them? And I want to answer that honestly. The fact that you're asking is itself significant data. Dark empaths rarely wonder if they've caused harm. They are more likely to wonder if others are catching on. The Otrovert who worries they might be a dark empath, who lies awake thinking about whether their perception of people is somehow predatory, is almost certainly not one. that quality of honest self-examination, that willingness to sit inside discomfort and ask hard questions about yourself, is not a dark empath trait. It is a deeply Otrovert one. But there are cleaner distinctions worth knowing. After a difficult conversation, do you feel drained or energized? When someone trusts you with something vulnerable, does your first instinct feel like responsibility or opportunity? When you read a person accurately, and you know something about them they haven't said, does that knowledge feel like a weight or an asset? The Otrovert almost always answers, drained, responsibility, weight. Not because they are better, but because that is how their system is wired. Understanding the difference between an Otrovert and a dark empath does something specific. It gives you a map. If you are an Otrovert, it tells you that your depth is not dangerous. Your observation is not manipulation. The fact that you see things others miss does not make you someone to be feared. It makes you someone who needs to be careful about who they let close, because not everyone will handle that kind of perception gently. If someone in your life is a dark empath, this distinction tells you something important about the dynamic you're in. It tells you that their warmth is real enough to feel, but it does not mean what warmth usually means. It tells you to watch the pattern, not just the moment. And if you're still not sure which one you are, sit with this. The Otrovert's greatest fear is being misunderstood. The dark empath's greatest fear is being seen through. One wants to be known. The other wants to remain unknown. There's a kind of relief that comes with understanding yourself clearly. Not the relief of having a label, but the relief of finally having language for something you've always felt, but never quite been able to name. If you recognized yourself in the Otrovert today, in the depth that exhausts you, in the observation that never turns off, in the fear of being misread as something you're not, then you already know what you are. You've always known. The work now is not figuring yourself out. The work is trusting what you find when you do. There's something in the description for people in the middle of that process. And if today was your first time here, the previous videos will give you the full picture of Otroversion and why understanding it changes the way you see everything. I'll see you in the next one. Elsewhere, minds, for those who never quite fit in.